I am an American. I killed Americans. I am a human being and I killed human beings. And I did it in my society. When someone abandons himself to being a victim, he's going to have to be one. I was losing a grasp on something that was too violent to keep inside forever. As I'm sitting there with a severed head in my hand, talking to it, or looking at it, and I'm about to go crazy. Literally, I'm about to go completely flywheel loose and just fall apart. I say, wow, this is insane. And then I told myself, you know what, if you're saying that, that makes it not insane. I said, I'm saying that. Viking heroes talking to severed heads and taking them to parties, old enemies, leather bags. Part of our heritage.
All right, I'm gonna get started. There are only two viewers here, so it's unfortunately what I get for being a bad little boy and being banned by YouTube on my main channel. But be lucky you live in America, right? Because freedoms and stuff like that. It's funny, the only freedoms they're offering up in this dog shithole country are things I don't want. Freedom for queers to get married, freedom to drink yourself into oblivion, drink yourself into a stupor, poison yourself with food, poison yourself uh, in other ways. These are the freedoms that they offer here in America. So be grateful, be grateful for freedoms. It's funny, they're offering up dog shit on a platter and we're supposed to be grateful for these freedoms. It's like, thanks, Uncle Sam, but I don't want any of these freedoms. You can take them and shove them up your ass. But anyway, this is just going to be a quick impromptu talk, incel talk, TFL talk, whatever you want to call it. I caught, I think his name is Jack Peterson. I think I talked to him on one of Steve Hoka's live streams. And I guess he went on. I think he's in Canada, which that's probably one of the major reasons why you're incel is that you live in fag Toronto, which is like the epicenter for all of this shit. But anyway, I guess he went on the. He gave some interviews with the media. I think he did a pretty good job. A respectable job, but I think he's mistaken. Okay, and he went off the rails when he started talking about genetically inferior men, and that's where he lost it. He was good up until then. He did this. The standard. You must disavow violence. Got to disavow it. Um, you know, got to be like Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Got to disavow violence. Um, so he was respectable, and he disregarded or discounted the misogyny and that stuff. But I think where he went wrong was where he started talking about how being genetically inferior on account of height, on account of bone structure. It's like, how many puddin faces do we need to see walking hand in hand with an attractive female before we come to the conclusion that it has nothing to do with lookism? There has nothing to do with looks. I mean, how many short, tubby Pajeets and Changs do we have to see walking hand in hand with attractive women of not just their own race, but women of other races, specifically Caucasian women, before we throw this whole lookism stuff out the window? Okay, when are we finally going? How many couples, how many mismatched couples do you have to see before you finally say, wow, it's not my problem? This is not because I'm not tall enough. It's not because my cheekbones aren't high enough. How many ugly, I mean, really hideously ugly people do we have to see who not only get women but get very attractive women? Okay, and they're dating them, they're in a relationship with them. I mean, this was one anecdote I forgot to share with everybody. This is from almost 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. I was when I was an undergraduate student, and I met somebody who was like a friend of a friend, and they would invite me. For a while I didn't drink, and then I started to. They would always, they'd have parties at their apartment and things like that on campus. And there were actually two mismatched couples. Um, the one guy was, and a lot of my friends or the friends of a friend were Jewish. So these people that I'm speaking of were Jewish, and a lot of the people at the parties were Jewish. I guess a lot of the people at this university were Jewish. But anyway, this one couple, the girl was very cute. She was Jewish. She looked like a young Sarah Silverman, like a young, cute Sarah Silverman, the dark hair, dark eyes, and she was in a relationship with a legitimate dwarf. He was a Jewish dwarf. He wasn't horribly short. He wasn't like 3 feet tall, but he was, I would say, under 5 feet tall. He was definitely well below her height. If she was, and she was not tall. She was, I don't know, 5'4". This guy must have been under 5 foot tall. So he wasn't, a midget, but he was definitely a dwarf. He had like that part, you can tell somebody has dwarfism by like their legs are shorter too. It's not that they're like a perfectly formed human. It's they're kind of out of proportion. Like their arms are kind of too short. They have like T-Rex arms, and their legs are kind of too short. This guy was a legitimate dwarf. And I mean, are we going to argue how good looking was the dwarf? I mean, are we really going to have this insane conversation about how good looking a dwarf was? It's like, those the Oompa Loompas from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Yeah, they were only 3 feet tall and they had orange skin, but damn, they had good bone structure. Or the Lollipop Guild from Wizard of Oz. We are the what were they? The Lollipop Guild, right? What were they? Munchkins, whatever the fuck they were, midgets. Okay, little people, little people. And are we really going to have the conversation? Yeah, brah. But were the Lollipop Guild? They had damn good bone structure. Okay, I mean they're going to resort to some we're really going to have, it's like Steve Hoka, or as Kix Passion mocked him. You can be 2 feet tall, but if you have a face like Michael J. Fox, it's like, are we really going to have this discussion about, well, how good looking? What was his face like? You told me he was 4 feet tall, but let's focus in on his face here. It's like, are we really going to be that absurd? He was a dwarf. He was a legitimate dwarf, and yet he had a very cute girlfriend. Yes, and I think they lived together. They definitely slept together. Um, and another couple, the girl was okay looking, not as cute. She was Jewish, her boyfriend was not. And her boyfriend was just a putz, a prematurely balding guy. I mean, there was nothing to write home about, but he had a girlfriend. This is like 8, 9 years ago. And even then, I shrugged it off when I saw it. I was like, it did get to me. It was like, damn, why am I single? And this dwarf has a very cute girlfriend. I mean, she didn't dress, provocatively. She was very cute. The dark, dark hair and that she was cute. And it's like, wow, and it struck me as like, how does a dwarf get a girlfriend like this? And I'm single. I mean, I'm 6'3", and this dwarf is like under 5 feet tall, and yet he has a girlfriend. It's like I was always taught, or I always heard growing up, women like tall men, women like handsome men, women like they respond to a deep voice. You've got to have a deep voice. And I was like, wow, and yet I'm single, and yet this dwarf has a girlfriend. It's like I would have been perfectly happy dating that girl. I wouldn't have thought, oh, she's too plain or she's too ugly. I would have been very happy to have been in a relationship with this girl, and yet I was alone. But anyway, it looks like we're finally picking up. We got some viewers here, so let's see here. Oh wow, we got already some comments here. Mutant Bashir is here. Let's see. Somebody likes my video on capitalism. Yeah, I mean, people who always they're of one of two minds. Either they're for small government, they're the very narrow-minded libertarians, Republicans, they want small government, or they're leftists who want big government, but they want to fund the most crazy shit possible. It's like I believe in big government. I think we need a strong, large government actively involved in our lives. It's just I think the government should be putting its resources toward, not promoting insane things, not I believe in universal health care. I believe we should have state subsidized health care for our own citizens. For our own citizens, where there's the expectation that if you get free health care, you need to try to take care of your body. Not you can go and weigh 500 pounds and you'll still get free healthcare. Not you can slink across the border, you've never contributed anything, and you'll still get free healthcare. No, I mean, I believe in certain socialist ideas, but in a nationalistic scheme, you take care of your own people first. I do believe, and this is getting off subject, but I do believe that we should have state subsidized college education. Okay, I don't think if you're born poor, you should just be shit out of luck. You might be a genius, but tough shit. Your parents are poor. Now you'll never get into a good university. Um, no, I do believe we should have a large, active government. It's just I would like to see the government putting its own people first, not dreamers, foreigners. And it's just yeah. So that's I did that video on capitalism. I see a lot of mismatched couples at my school all the time, or women who are lesbians. Yeah, and we're going to circle back. So I'm going to come back to this is not your fault, guys. And these uh, articles that have come out, it was more shaming language, which was to be expected, from that fat Turk, Cenk Uygur, or whatever his name was, from the Young Turks. Um, that greasy slime ball. And he's like, you need to work on yourselves. It's your fault that you're socially awkward. It has nothing to do with your social skills or your lack of social skills. Okay. If if a substantial percentage of women in this country are either not interested in men, not interested in dating, they're just focused on their career, their family, their girlfriends, or they are legitimately bisexual or lesbian, meaning they're having romantic or sexual relationships with each other, and they're not seeking out men for romantic or sexual relationships. And all the polls indicate that this is true. Okay. I mean, a poll from 5 or 6 years ago, which was the most recent one I could find, put it at 20% of white females were bisexual, 20% identified as bisexual. So you can only imagine 6 years later what that number is up to. If it was 20% 6, 7 years ago when that poll was conducted, what is it today? And moreover, what is it amongst the under 20 demographic? What is it amongst high school age students? I'm guessing it's up to one third, one fourth, almost half. So if you have most women, their libido is shot. And antidepressants do kill your libido, even as a man. Even as a man with a very high sex drive, if you go on antidepressants, your libido is basically gone. Okay. So you can only imagine a woman with an already lowered libido. If she's on antidepressants, if she's on hormonal contraception, she's not going to have any interest in sex at all. And what percentage of women are bisexual or lesbians? I mean, there were times I was on college campuses and I would see more gay couples, men holding hands with other men, than I would see heterosexual couples. I saw in one day, no joke, 3 gay couples, men holding hands with each other. Okay. And they were not like from some strange foreign country where that's their tradition, like in Saudi Arabia or some shit. Now, these were Western white guys. They were clearly gay. And I saw not one white heterosexual couple, not one couple kissing, holding hands, nothing. So let's see here. So that's the point of this video. It's going to be a short one. It's just going to be, it's not your fault. You need to stop blaming yourselves. Um, and that's, all these people are, oh, well, you guys need to work on yourselves. You need to approach more women. You need to be more confident. It's funny, whenever we see these mismatched couples, we see a beautiful woman with a dwarf I sent Hugh LaTreviata, I sent, this was from Roosh's Twitter page. And I had been posting on Return of Kings for years, and I had been telling these idiots that I'm seeing more and more Caucasian females with Asian males. And everybody laughed at me when I was saying this shit 2 years ago. They were laughing at me. And finally, Roosh posted on his Twitter that millennial girls are much more open to dating Asian males. And somebody had posted some YouTube channel or some Instagram page where it was a very attractive Caucasian female with a very unattractive Asian male. And before you go accusing me of racism, I do know the difference between an attractive Asian male and an unattractive Asian male. I can say that, certain Korean or Japanese males uh, have, attractive faces, or, they have, they're fit or whatever. This particular specimen looked, as a Chinese female friend of mine put it, like a brown Chinese farmer. And she had said this of one of our classmates. And I said, well, I don't, she goes, don't you think he looks like a Chinese farmer? Oh, like meaning he had no place at university. And I said, well, I don't really know what a Chinese farmer is supposed to look like, but basically brown and with an ugly pug nose. Okay. Very crude features. And it's like, how many couples that are mismatched do we need to see before we abandon this lookism thing, and we abandon, and every time we see a mismatched couple, everybody is awing and saying, oh, she must, and people are saying, well, why is she with him? And these people get all indignant, and they're like, maybe she just sees the inner beauty. She just sees the inner beauty. Maybe he's a nice guy. But anytime there's an incel, anytime there's a TFLer, the standard statement is, you've got to work on yourself. You've got to improve yourself. You're awkward. You're creepy. You're doing something that's scaring the women away. So whenever we see these ugly men with women, it's because the girl managed to overlook his physical inadequacies, his physical failings, and see the diamond in the rough. But anytime there's an incel or a TFLer, the standard line is, you've got to, it's always pin the tail on the man. Instead of pin the tail on the donkey, it's pin the blame on the man. Most particularly, pin the blame on the white male. That's always what it is. And I did a video on this. I said, don't believe the hype about the herbivore men in Japan. And I cited, there were a couple articles, I think they were in the New York Times, and it was an article about how dating coaches are trying to advise men in China. And they said for a lot of men in China, they are unable to find a girlfriend. And so you have these dating coaches who are advising them, like, on what to wear, what to say, because these guys have no experience with women. And you can find this article. It was from, I think, earlier this year or late last year, so just a few months ago, and it was in the New York Times and a few other big newspapers, and it was written by a female Asian writer, and it was very sympathetic. It was very sympathetic. It was, these guys are good guys, they're a little awkward, they're a little shy, but they're good guys. Their heart is in the right place. They just want to meet a nice girl. Meanwhile, anytime there's an incel or a TFLer in the West, in Canada, Australia, the United States, he's always alone because it's his fucking fault. He's creepy. He's entitled. He's weird. And yet the portrayal of incel TFL men in China was very sympathetic. It was, they're just victims of, the one child policy. They're good guys. They just, women should give them a chance. When will you ever see such treatment of incels or TFLs here in the West? The Western media is always, oh, these men are so entitled. They feel they're entitled. Yeah, they feel entitled to human warmth and companionship. Yeah, the outrage. How entitled is that? They feel entitled to, human warmth and companionship. Yeah, the nerve of those guys to feel entitled to human companionship, and they'll try to spin it in the media that it's strictly a sexual thing, that it's these guys are sex maniacs, they're sex fiends, they're nymphomaniacs, and they just go to a hooker and shut up about it. That's not what it's about. It's about having companionship. It's about having a relationship. It's not about coming. Okay, that's not what it's about for most men. But let's see here. Yeah, the LMS community has to come to terms with this shit. How many mismatched couples do we have to see before we throw this out the window? Somebody, Purple says, at work, all I see is happy Asian couples and average Asian guys with really hot Asian women. Yeah, exactly. And isn't it funny? The one Asian MGTOW in the whole MGTOW sphere, MGTOW community, you may be familiar with him, Jerry Liu. Okay, that's the only Asian MGTOW that I know of, aside from Angry MGTOW, and I don't think he was Asian. I think he was half Asian. Jerry Liu, in so many of his videos, he has females appearing in his videos. And it's like, how many women can this guy just call up and be like, do you want to be in a video where I talk about how gay it is to like women and about how superficial women are and shit like that? I mean, he is a very unattractive Asian male. He looks like an alien. He looks like a gray alien peopleoid. He's got the bald head. He's got the distended cranium. He looks like fucking Pumpkinhead. He's got the very narrow, almost absent chin. He's very stick-like. He looks like a praying mantis, but he looks like Pumpkinhead. He has the big exploded head like a fucking gray alien. And yet he seems to have all of these girls, appearing on his YouTube channel. Notice not one of, the TFLers or incels like us, like me, like Steve Hoka, like Kicks Passion, whatever. None of us could ever, hey, I'm here with my female friend. We're not dating, but we're having a discussion, and we're talking about different things, and you know, and you can see many videos by Jerry Lou, and he's interacting with women. He's uh, talking to them. He's, they're sitting in his room or in his office or whatever the fuck, and they're watching some video about whatever. Some guy gets rejected or whatever. And it's like, well, that's interesting. Like, oh, he seems to have a lot of female companions or a lot of female acquaintances, which is not true for Western men. But yeah, exactly. I see the same shit. All I see is happy Asian couples and average Asian guys with really hot Asian women. Exactly. I mean, and that's what gets to me. It seems that Asian women make allowances and dispensations for their men, that white women do not make for their men. And moreover, Asian women actually have racial loyalty, but it seems that they're willing to cut their men slack. It's okay that their men don't go to the gym. It's okay that their men are short. It's okay that their men are socially awkward because, he's really smart. He's really smart. He's a really smart guy. I'm a very intelligent man myself, okay? And doesn't seem to help me at all. But Asian women, and black women do the same thing for their men. Yeah, he's been in and out of prison. Yeah, he's a deadbeat. Yeah, but he's a good boy. His heart's in the right place. His heart's in the right place. He's got a heart of gold. He's got a good heart. But with white men, no, 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 no. And the white men never get a break. It's always pin the tail of guilt on the white man. It's always the white man's fault. Even other white men will blame other white men for their failings. And you see that all the time with these incels and TFLers. It's always the older guys who grew up at a time where society wasn't so fucked up and the women weren't so filled with a burning, seething hatred for men. And they're like, you just got to approach more women. I'm supposed to approach women with their headphones on who are reading a book on the subway. I'm supposed to approach women who have their earbuds in at the gym and a resting bitch face and a scowl on their face. I'm supposed to do that, huh? It's not really my fault that this society has been destroyed, torn down, and rearranged. It used to be that white people they didn't necessarily, it wasn't that they met through arranged marriages or through family things. It was they met each other in a more organic way, whether that was, through hobbies or events or things like that. They didn't have to resort to what I maintain is the habits of gay people, of homosexuals, which is hookups, gay dating apps, Grinder, spun off Tinder, um, going to these loud nightclubs filled with drugs and alcohol. I mean, this is everything is straight out of the gay playbook. These drug fueled uh, party nights at these nightclubs, at these bars. That's how the gays conducted themselves. They they partied all night on ecstasy and on other drugs. And we see that same experience with ecstasy and club drugs and the rave scene being adopted by heterosexuals. It's not my fault. It's not, Georgie Boy's Virgin Messiah's fault that this society was fucking deconstructed. Let's see here. Let's look at the comments. Yeah, media cartoons push the oofy doofy hubby schlubby thing. Yeah, I mean, whether it's been going on for decades. Homer Simpson with Marge Simpson, Peter Griffin. No, Peter Griffith. I always confuse those two. Is it Peter Griffin? No, Griffith. Peter Griffith. Let me see. Hold on. I always. Oh, it's Peter Griffin. Okay, Griffin, like the animal, or is that a Griffith? One second. Griffith. What the fuck is the mythological creature? It's like part eagle, part. Hold on, I'm trying to find it. Thing that's like part eagle, part lion. Griffin. Oh, that's a griffin. Okay, but it's spelled differently. No, it's the same. Griffin. Oh, it's with a Gryphon is a legendary creature. Yeah, Peter Griffin. It's okay, okay, so it's just spelled differently. All right. Anyway, Peter Griffin with Lois, right? You have even going back to married with children, right? You had Al Bundy and Peg, and it was the hot redhead, the attractive redhead who was, begging for sex, like, and they even parodied that on The Simpsons. And he's like, no, Peg. She's like, Al, let's have sex. And it's no, Peg. And they were making fun of that on The Simpsons as to how lowbrow it was. Think of Tim the Tool Man Taylor, right? Home Improvement from the 90s. Home Improvement. You had the guy who was grunting. I mean, that's what he would do. He would literally grunt like an animal. And they even parodied that on The Simpsons, where he backs up on his riding lawnmower and runs over his next door neighbor Wilson, and then he grunts like an animal. Um, American Dad, all of these cartoons, all of these sitcoms, it's the same thing over and over again. Yeah, that's what they push. That's what they push. It's no longer father knows best. It's always the guy's an idiot. The guy's an idiot. Daddy daycare. He can't do shit right. Um, let's see here. Just be midget theory. There was another time I was at a bar and I was out with with friends of a friend alongside my friend. I didn't know these people, but they were acquaintances of him. And this one girl who was visiting from South America, she was attractive, and she said she said something like she had a thing for black males. But do you know who she went home with? She went home with a literal white midget, a white midget. He was a little person. He was, and I'm not making this up. And we all expressed disgust the next night when we found out that she had gone home with this white midget. And we were like, "How could you do that?" She's like, "Well, we just made out." It's like, well, she's like, I didn't have sex with him. We just made out. And it's like, you made out with a midget. So it's yeah. How good looking was the midget's face? Like, we're gonna have that conversation. How good looking was the Ewok? Yeah, look, LMS will call an Ewok handsome if it suits their agenda. Yeah, or they'll ascribe some secret alpha trait to him. They'll say the midget has a 12-inch dick, like mini me. He's like a human tripod, right? Um, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, see, I think Mutant Bashir, he's in high school still, so he's a younger guy. You wouldn't believe the shit I see at my school on the screen in the lunchroom. It said it said straights and gays hand in hand. Yeah, they were starting the gay straight alliance when I was about to graduate, and I graduated high school in '05. So they were starting to push that, the gay straight alliance. And it's weird though, because when I was in middle school, when I was in high school, you could say, "Don't be a fag," or "That's so gay," and it wouldn't raise an eyebrow. Teachers wouldn't get upset with you. Girls would not get upset with you. Now, you would probably be suspended or expelled for using that language. And when I was in middle school and high school, none of the girls were gay or bisexual. They would not want to be seen as being bi or lesbian. That was no, 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 no. That was, none of them were like that. And now it's in the open. And like I said, how is it your fault? It's a zero-sum game, people. If 30 or 40 or 50% of the women are bi or lesbian and they're dating each other, it means a corresponding percentage of men are going to be TFL or Incel. It's not going to be a small percentage of men who are on the spectrum. It's going to be a very significant portion of men are simply going without. Okay. It's just the way it is. So when you want to blame these men, you should be blaming society, because it was society that promoted lesbianism, that promoted homosexuality, that promoted bisexuality, that promoted this rapist area that all men are rapists. They inculcated this fear of men into women. Okay. They put these posters up on college campuses saying, yes, all men. They put that fucking fear of all men into these women, and then they want to blame men for their situation. They want to blame men for being alone, for not having, like I said, I will admit, I don't have one fucking female's phone number in my phone. I don't have one, not even as a friend, not even as somebody I could call up and say, hey, does this shirt look good on me? And that's my fault. Huh? That's my fault. Okay. It was this society that promoted lesbianism, bisexuality. They made it cool. They made it look chic. Okay. They pushed this agenda. And then they want to blame the men who would like the warmth of human companionship. Oh, they're entitled. No, 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 no. That's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. I think personal warmth or a personal relationship ranks just above food and water and shelter in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. It's pretty low on the hierarchy of needs. Okay. It's not way at the top, it's pretty close to the bottom. And it was recognized, whatever, 50 years ago, that, a sense of belonging, a sense of companionship is pretty essential to normal human functioning. And I see the Asians get their act together. The Asians are paired up. The Asians are in monogamous relationships. They pair bond. They pair bond, unlike Westerners, where the women are lesbians, they're bisexual, they're asexual, they're terrified of men, or if they're not terrified of men, because oftentimes they're not. I mean, the way they dress and they'll go down like dark alleys in the middle of the night. I don't think exactly they're terrified. Um, but they're resentful of men. They're hostile toward men. I think that that's the best way to put it. They're just brimming over with hostility. I mean, they're not friendly. I mean, I remember girls were actually friendly when I was, 13, 14, 15. And, Virgin Messiah said the same thing. And it's only years later after you've left high school that you look back and you realize, oh shit, it was all it was all downhill after I left high school. High school is the last time you are surrounded by women or girls, females of your own age who are single. And that's the last time that'll ever happen. That's the last time. You're in a densely populated setting, the classroom or the school or the hallways, and it only gets worse after that. It's only going downhill after that. And I mean, I said in one of my videos, this is like from almost a year ago, where the first girl that I not dated, but my first quote girlfriend, or I don't, can an 8-year-old have a girlfriend? I don't know, but this girl had a crush on me, and we were seeing each other at in third grade. And I mean, I remember her name, Cassandra, and she lived one block over. And it's crazy to think that when I was 8, I could date, or, the girl who had a crush on me, or we were whatever seeing each other. She lived 1 minute away from me, one block over. And now with online dating, we're expanding our radius of search 10 miles, 20 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles. We got people crossing state lines uh, for a date. They're going to the next city to get a date. When 20 odd years ago, a girl wanted to date me or be my girlfriend, in third grade, and she lived one block over. And it's funny, this is my old hometown, and I've been back and I walked past this girl's house. Her house is actually abandoned. It looks like it's been abandoned for years. And, the windows are all boarded up. I mean, talk about like a rust belt or whatever. The gate is hanging off its hinges. I mean, it's dilapidated. I mean, nobody's lived there for many, many years. And I mean, I think it's sort of a perfect metaphor for, the dynamic between men and women these days, just how dysfunctional and abandoned it is. Uh, let's see here. Let's see here. Yeah, the zeitgeist or spirit of the time also affects women's mate selection big time. Oh yeah. Yeah, these guys who were doing well 20 years ago at spring break, the young Val Kilmer looking guys with think of like Sting, the wrestler, before he had that black and white look. He was the surfer guy, right? He had the blonde crew cut, looked like Val Kilmer. That kind and that body, that physique, the volleyball look. That guy would have been having girls would have loved him back in the 90s, okay? On spring break or whatever. Today he'd be fucking invisible. He'd be having to settle for a fucking transsexual. He'd be settling for a facsimile of a woman. Uh Lonely white guys. Yep. Yep. We are seen as the big bad guys. Exactly. Yep. I have videos I've done about this, and I've called it pin the blame on the white man instead of pin the tail on the donkey. Everybody is always, oh, white men are so entitled. And yet those same incels, those same TFLers who are going to a dating coach in China, that's not seen as slippery, underhanded, creepy, seductive techniques. That's seen as they're just trying to meet somebody. But when white guys go to, Roosh or to these other PUA people, that's creepy. You're learning how to seduce women. You're learning how to trick women. You're learning how to manipulate women. That's creepy. So when Asian men do it, it's okay. It's fine. They're just trying to meet somebody. But when white men do it, it's a crime. Let's see. Let's look at the comments here. Yeah, if white women are so hateful toward their own men, then maybe our race doesn't deserve to survive. And I wanted to avoid, putting it so bluntly. I know there are a few white females who watch my channel. One of these girls is young. She's 18 and she's nice. She's very nice. Like she has a very sweet personality. But I mean, ask yourselves this question, and I ask myself this: aside from family members, okay, aside from female relatives, has a white woman ever been nice to you? And I don't mean flirtatious. I don't mean, you know, making overtures or whatever to you. I mean simply nice to you. Has a white woman ever been nice to you? And I would have to go back to probably elementary school or middle school to point out a time when white females were actually nice to me. And like I said, I'm not talking that they, did something, extravagant for me. I mean, just decent to me, just nice. Ask yourselves this question: has a white woman not related to you ever been nice to you? Let's see here. I'm going to go through the comments. We actually got quite a few viewers for an impromptu live stream. Um, let's see. Yeah, girls like the gays at my school. Yeah, yeah. Every girl has a gay bestie. Every girl is now a fag hag. Um, yeah, women went from being a compliment to men to being in competition with men. Exactly. It used to be that, it was about harmony, which is what Asians still have. They have that yin and yang. They have that, complementary, that both sides cooperate. Now, men and women in the West are competitors. They're seen as rivals. Um, let's see. Yeah, I think women do have a natural instinct towards masculine men, but the propaganda attempts to modify the instincts. I agree. I mean, people want to talk about female nature. I don't think it's female nature to want to abort your baby. Okay, I don't think it's female instinct to want to kill your own offspring. I gave the example of, let me look her up. Oh, it was a Puritan woman. Uh, Hannah Dustin. Yeah, that was the. I think I talked about this in the previous live stream. Hannah Dustin, and I mean, you want to talk about uh, female nature. This woman was. This is in the 1600s. She was abducted by Indians. Her baby was killed, and then when her kid, the Indians who had kidnapped her fell asleep, she slit their throats and scalped them. That's maternal instinct. That's female nature. What you see today is mind manipulation. I mean, for the same reason, in B.F. Skinner manipulated pigeons into pecking buttons, into, pulling levers with their beaks. That's not natural pigeon behavior. He fucking programmed them. Okay. It's the same thing for you can get animals to do all sorts of things if you condition them right. If you either provide positive reinforcement by giving them a treat, or you provide negative reinforcement by, supplying an electrical shock to them. All of these animals were conditioned to doing something unnatural. Okay. I mean, look at, B.F. Skinner with his pigeons. He got them to do all sorts of crazy shit. Okay. It's conditioning. Let's see here. Mutant Bashir says, girls like me when I show a sensitive side or an effeminate side. Yeah, they don't want this stoic he-man who, he's laconic, he's self-sufficient. They want somebody who's going to turn on the waterworks and inject drama, be a source of drama. They don't want somebody who's stoic. Okay, stoicism worked hundreds of years ago. Stoicism worked thousands of years ago. It no longer works. That's toxic masculinity. For instance, look at all of these behaviors that are now criminalized. That's why I'm so wary of anything claiming, he's on the spectrum, autism, Asperger's, all that shit. It's all conditional, okay? It's all based on what's expedient politically and socially at the moment. Things like these bursts of rage that we see where, the guy, what was his name? Alec Minison or Alec, what was his name? Alec Manassian. He in a fit of rage, and that's what you would call it, in a fit of rage, he drove through a crowd of pedestrians. Or look at all of these spree shooters. That's an act of rage. It's funny how rage is criminalized today, but rage and hatred is discouraged. We see all of these banners, love for all, hatred for none. I'm looking at the National Post, and it's the Toronto van attack, and it's like people are laying flowers, and they have a sign: love for all, hatred for none. And we all have seen these signs that say, hatred has no home here. Hatred has no home here. And yet, what do we see when we look throughout history? When we look at World War I, World War II, we see all of these incitements to hate that were encouraged directly by the United States government, by the British government. We've seen these posters: beat back the Hun, kill the Hun, do your duty and kill the Hun. All of these portrayals of Germans and Japanese as subhumans. I can show you. I can provide the link to these propaganda posters that portray Japanese as subhumans, that portray them as rats. There's a rat being caught with its neck in a mousetrap, and it has the slanty eyes and the buck teeth. These crude caricatures encouraged and promoted hatred of Germans and Japanese. World War I, World War II for the Germans. All of these things about kill the Hun. So it's funny. It's funny how they shamed men into killing. Okay, and that's what they did. They encouraged hatred. That's what there's no other word for it. There was a true burning hatred for Germans and for Japanese. I mean, look at all the books. What to Do with Germany? Germany Must Perish. These books that were written by what was it? The Morgenthau Plan. Henry Morgenthau was a senior member of FDR's administration, and he called for the sterilization of Germans. He called for the mass starvation of Germans. He called for Germany being reduced from an industrial state into a pastoral state. He called for the mass liquidation of Germans. Okay, Germany Must Perish. What to Do with Germany? Look these books up. Okay, they're real. So it's funny how these behaviors, okay, such as rage, okay, and I think you have to be filled with rage in order to put your life on the line, to storm the beaches of Normandy. I think you kind of have to be filled with rage in order to do that. To, go into no man's land, okay, in World War I, to cross this field of barbed wire, to, try to storm a machine gun nest. You kind of have to be filled with rage to do that. And so when it's convenient, the United States government, the British government, they promote hatred. They promote rage and hostility. But then when it falls out of convenience, when it's no longer practical or when it's no longer useful, now we see these governments have done a 180, and you can't hate. You can't hate anybody for any reason. You can't do that. Rage and anger, well, those are signs of a deranged mind. Those are symptoms of a sick mind if you're filled with anger and hostility. And yet, these were the very same things they were encouraging amongst men 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Isn't that funny? Let's look at the comments here. Let's see here. Okay, I think we're caught up here. Yeah, Hannah Dustin, that's what I said. And that's what they'll try to do. They'll say incel is simply it's about sex. That's all it's about. The guys trying to get their dick wet. That's all it is. These guys are just entitled. They're obsessed with sex. They're porn addicts, whatever. That's how they'll spin it. And they won't talk about loneliness. They won't talk about the need for human companionship. Like I said, I think it's now easier for a gay man to be in a relationship than it is for a straight man. I see, and they always want to talk about gays have it so hard. Gays and transsexuals have a higher rate of suicide. And they try to make it sound like they have a higher rate of suicide because society's so mean to them. Everybody's so mean to them. No, it's called a comorbidity. Okay. They're mentally ill. Okay. They have a higher rate of suicide because they're gay. Okay. They're comorbid. Okay. It has nothing to do with that they're treated shabbily by society. From what I see, people love gays, especially women. Every queer that I've known, like professionally through work, has had a fucking fantastic social life. They've had tons of friends. This idea that homosexuals that they're more likely to be homeless and poor. Not from what I've seen. Look at fucking New York University. Probably 50 or 60% of all of the male students there are gay. Okay, and NYU is the most expensive university in the country. So no, I don't think gays and transsexuals come from poverty. I think they're more likely to come from wealth. And like I said, every gay person that I've known professionally has had a fucking fantastic social life. Okay, it's straight men who are suffering. It's straight men who don't have a social life. It's the straight men who don't have friends. Yeah. So they're going to make it out to be just about sex. That these incels are just crybabies. They're just entitled. It's funny. Apparently, men aren't entitled to human affection. They're not entitled to a companionship. They're not entitled to a relationship. But gays are entitled to the right to marry. Gays are entitled to the right to express themselves sexually. That's interesting. So some people are entitled. Some people are entitled to terminate their own pregnancy. Gays must be allowed to practice openly their sexuality. But straight men cannot be entitled to a relationship. They're not entitled to human companionship. They're not they can't be entitled to that. That's wrong for them to feel that way. Like I said, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's right above food, water, and shelter. Okay. Um, yeah, females today love gay males. They love them. I saw in New York City, this was a Friday night, and it was a little tiny lisping fag walking with four beautiful girls, and they were all hanging onto him, onto his arms, trying to keep up with him. Uh, and you would think, wow, shouldn't women be repulsed by gay men? And it goes beyond that. How many stories do we have of married men who come out as transsexuals to their wives? And we see these stories in the newspapers, or on the news or whatever. And their wives, far from running from them, saying, "Get away from me, you sick weirdo," they elect to stay with them. And when they do these interviews, with the news channel, they say, "Our relationship is stronger than ever. Our relationship is stronger than ever." So, what about, Rollo Tomasi and the gorilla mindset and all this shit about you got to be a man, you got to be a real man? How many instances of these 40 or 50-year-old men, married men, who come out, they come out to their wives as transgender, and they start taking female hormones, and the wife doesn't leave him. The wife does not divorce him. The wife stays with him and says, "Yeah, this is, I guess, now my wife." And they'll say, in public to the camera, "Our relationship is better than it's ever been. Our relationship is stronger than it's ever been." How do we reconcile everything that we see with these people who want to talk about, "Oh, you got to be the biggest, baddest nigga in town. You got to be a real thug to keep these women"? These men are doing the most beta thing imaginable, saying, "I'm a woman," and yet their wives still stay with them. And yet we still have these morons out there, these gurus, these self-professed gurus like Roosh and Rollo Tomasi, saying, "Oh, you just got to be a real man. You gotta slap her around like Sean Connery." I don't think so. That's not what we see. That's not what we see. Look it up if you don't believe me. Okay. All of these stories, these coming out stories of these married couples, the wife does not leave the husband. The wife doesn't leave him and say, "God, you freak, you sicken me." No, she stays with him. But what happened to divorce rape? What happened to divorce rape? I thought these women were chomping at the bit to leave men at the slightest provocation, so that they could justify taking all of his shit, taking him to the cleaners. And yet, transforming yourself into a woman, these women still stay with their men. Talk about, stand by your man. So, like I said, I think a woman is more likely to stay with a man if it comes out he's a fucking burlesque dancer, he's a drag queen, he's a transsexual, rather than he's a real alpha male and he's been seeing women on the side. He's been cheating on her with other women. He has 10 children from 10 different women. He's that in demand. I think the woman is more likely to leave that real alpha man than the fucking drag queen transvestite. Okay, so how's that for all that talk about being a real man with a gorilla mindset, being a Chad? Okay, a woman is going to leave the Chad, but she's going to stay with I don't know what you would even call them, the ultimate beta. I don't like these words, but I mean, I don't know what else to call them. Oh, we're seeing a huge rise in STDs. Oh yeah, we're seeing it. I maintain strongly a lot of these millennials are going to be dying very early from HPV related cancers. People do not look well these days. People in their 20s and 30s, I think, look 20 years older than they really are. They're not aging well. Okay, so I'm sorry, but the millennials are not living to be 100 years old. They're not. Okay, they will be lucky to make it to, I'd say, 55 or 60, and that's pushing it. That's pushing it. Um, let's see. Yeah. When I ask that question, has a white woman ever been nice to you? I mean, if we're gonna be honest here, I've had black women be nice to me. As much as I don't find black women attractive, uh, I've had black women be friendly toward me. Um, I've had I've had some Asian women be friendly toward me, but yeah, black women. I've never had one be actually nasty to me or curt with me. They've actually been always friendly toward me. I've never had a white female be nice to me. And like I said, I don't mean flirtatious. I mean just nice to me, just a decent person. I've never had that. Um, I don't find dark skin attractive. So it's not just a race issue. I don't find tan white women attractive. So if like a white woman, if she's tan, if she has like she goes tanning or she goes sunbathing, I don't find her attractive. I don't find Southeast Asian women attractive. It's not a race thing so much as a color thing. I only like I'm only attracted to the white skin. So whether that's like Brahmin class Indian or Northeast Asian, like Japanese women with very light skin, but not Cambodian women, not Laotian women. Um, yeah, so and tan white women. I find them very unattractive. I just don't like tan skin. But anyway, I've been streaming for an hour. So my point here was to get men to stop blaming themselves because I watched, this guy, Jack Peterson. He actually invited me to do an interview with him. Initially, I brushed him off. I said no because I didn't think it would be productive. Uh, because I'm not arguing with him as to what constitutes an objectively attractive person. If you were wanting to commission a painting or a sculpture of somebody, yeah, I mean, there are certain features that you would want, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about women either overriding their instincts and deliberately choosing men they're not physically attracted to so that they maintain mental and emotional control of the relationship, or we're talking about some other factor, as Hewlett Traviata puts it, factor X, that there's something else at play. I maintained I think Hewlett Traviata says women are actually attracted to these oofy goofy guys. I maintain that they're not, and they're basically overriding their instincts, and they're deliberately choosing men they have no feelings for. They're deliberately choosing men they're not attracted to as a means of keeping themselves emotionally separated, from not getting personally invested in the relationship. That's what I maintain. I believe it's a form of control. It's a higher level of control. It's a protection mechanism. Um, but whatever the case is, I think it's wrong for men to keep blaming themselves, to keep thinking it's something they're doing that they're too short, they're not attractive, they don't have enough money, they're socially awkward. Like I said, a couple of things. If many women are just not interested in men, they're not interested in dating. A very high percentage are bi or lesbian. And it doesn't help that this country has open borders and the majority of immigrants are young men. Okay, when we have millions upon millions of men coming into this country, H-1B visas, well, who do you think that is? It's 95, 99% men from India. Okay, college students, they're going to be disproportionately male. Okay, so this country, even the Central American immigrants who come here to work lowly jobs, they are men. Their women stay back in the burrios. Their women stay back in the tin huts. So this country is just being inundated with immigrants who are disproportionately young men. So you have a perfect storm scenario. Women are not really interested in men, period. You have anti-white sentiment. You have white men are evil. You have anti-male hysteria, rape hysteria, the push for bisexuality, the push for lesbianism. You have this country being turned into a massive sausage fest through mass immigration. You have all of these things happening. It's not your fault. It's like playing musical chairs, okay? You can have 20 great looking men, but if there are only 10 chairs, 10 men are not going to have a seat, okay? 10 men are going to be left standing. So think of it that way. It's really like musical chairs, and it really has nothing to do with you or your personal failings, okay? It's society, okay? This is systemic. There are many factors are at play, and nobody talked about incel or TFL or love shyness prior to the 1980s. In the 1980s, a few scholars started talking about love shy men who were genuinely, they were probably, autistic. They had severe social anxiety. Okay, that was the 1980s. Then in the 1990s, early like 2000s, you started to see the rise of game, pickup artistry, peacocking, that shit, right? And so, I mean, men in the 50s, the 60s, and 70s did not have problems meeting women, even the dorky, nerdy guys. they got with somebody. Okay, 60s and 70s, men had no problem meeting women. Like I said, then in the 80s, you started the first intimations, you started to hear talk about love shyness. Some men just had no luck with women, but they had genuine problems. They were severely, they had severe social anxiety, okay, things like that. And then in the 90s, the 2000s, then it was regular guys had problems. That's why they invented game theory. That's why they invented pickup artistry. Um, and now it's gone to a whole new level where men are, straight men are considering going under the knife for cosmetic surgery, for plastic surgery. They're going to get implants in their penis. They're going to get pec implants. They're gonna have their fucking legs shattered and their have inserts put in their leg bones to make them taller. All of this crazy shit. So we're like, it's become progressively worse and worse and worse. Okay, started with just a few love shy guys, and you had people resorting to PUA, and now they're going full bore plastic surgery. Um, they're talking like gay men. Okay, they're getting Botox, they're getting facial reconstructive surgery, they're getting colored contact lenses to have blue eyes. They're doing all this crazy shit. So it's just becoming progressively worse. And I don't think the men really are changing. I think it's the conditions are changing. Women are becoming less receptive. Women are becoming more hostile, etc. I'm not sexist. The way some men talk, they speak in a very vulgar manner. They talk about fucking women and pumping and dumping and chucking and fucking, and I don't speak like that. That's not what I would want. A lot of these men, and I don't think they have options. I don't think they actually do what they say they're doing. But some people, you hear Roosh and he talks about just pumping and dumping and all, Chris Cantu, these people, and they talk in a very crude, very vulgar manner, and that's not for me. I don't want to have indiscriminate sex with many women. I don't want that. And people would say that, oh, you're gay. No, I don't want to. I don't want to have sex with strangers. I don't want to have sex with strange women that I don't know. I don't know their name. I don't know anything about them. No, that doesn't. That I don't want that. I want a monogamous relationship. I don't want to be a fornicator. I would want one woman I'm very attracted to and I have a deep connection with, not, having sex with strange women at bars and nightclubs and off of Tinder. Like I said, that type of mentality, that's gay. That is the true homosexual mindset of having sex with people you don't even know their names. You're having multiple partners, you're having three ways and all that shit. That's something straight out of San Francisco in the 1980s. Okay, that is not how straight people behave, at least traditionally or historically. Straight people did not behave like that. That type of behavior of anonymous sex one night stands, that is something straight out of the gay playbook, and I don't like that. I mean, it doesn't appeal to me. Okay, I don't want that. So no, I mean, I'm not sexist, because maybe somebody who's sexist, they speak more in terms truly of objectifying women. They speak in vulgar terms and things like that. So no, I don't see myself as sexist. Let's see here. But I might get in contact with that Jack Peterson to do an interview with him if he's still up for it. He did have the uh, nerve to go on public television, and like I said, I think he's beating himself up. I think when he starts talking about genetically inferior men, you sound like a crazy disciple of Charles Darwin when you start talking about that. You start talking about peacocks and shit like that. And it's funny, all these people who talk about how the peacocks are competing for mates and all this shit, or if you watch prairie chickens perform their ritualistic dance to attract a hen on the prairie. In all of these cases, the female is not even paying attention to the male. So it's kind of interesting. They talk about uh, how the male of the species is competing. If you actually watch these nature videos, the female isn't even fucking looking at the as the males are competing, and they're competing, that they have their competing displays, and they're puffing up their chests, and they're doing all this shit. The female of the species is looking completely disinterested. She's not even fucking looking at them. So how can you claim that it's the biggest baddest peacock that gets the hen? I mean, the hen is not even looking at them. Um, and then there are cases where you have like these animals that have locked horns, uh, again competing for a mate, and their horns become entangled and they basically die. So they're like budding horns, like like the bison or the longhorn sheep or whatever, and their horns actually become interlocked, and they fucking or it's like like two bull moose, and they're fighting with their antlers. They're so fucking big and aggressive, their antlers become interlocked, and they both starve to death. So it's like how can you argue it's the biggest baddest animal that wins when you have these examples from nature? Uh, but it's society wide. That's the whole point of this live stream. It's men need to stop fixing the blame on themselves, and they need to start looking outward at how women are disdainful of men, how they're hostile toward men, how they're suspicious of men, how they're resentful toward men. Um, the high rate of bisexuality and lesbianism, how this homosexuality was pushed, okay, as an acceptable alternative lifestyle. um, Mass immigration, which is disproportionately male, and we have to have a frank discussion that, well, being entitled to a companion, being entitled to a relationship, I'm not talking about sex, we're talking about emotional intimacy, okay, which we talk about human rights all the time. We talk about the gays have rights. The gays must have the right to marry. They must have the right to adopt children. They must have the right to donate blood. Everybody has rights except straight men. That's interesting. Everybody has rights. Black people have rights to not be discriminated against. People, some crazy fuck with a face tattoo has the right to not be discriminated against in the hiring process when he goes for a job interview. It's like, if you have a fucking swastika tattooed on your forehead, or whatever, just a teardrop tattoo under your eye, meaning you killed somebody, I don't think people should hire you, okay? Or they should have the right to not hire you. But everybody has rights except heterosexual men. It's interesting. So we need to identify that there are a lot of other factors at play. It's not you're awkward, you're socially awkward, you don't dress well, you don't smell good, etc. Okay? This is a society problem. This isn't a personal problem. So that was the point of this live stream. Hey, Virgin Messiah, thanks for dropping in. Uh, was at the park. Lots of white couples. No one had a kid. Almost all had a dog, though. Yep. And you see these fucking bumper stickers. Doggy mom. Proud dog dad. I'm a proud doggy dad. It's surrogates. Again, this is something out of the gay playbook. This is what gays did. Okay, this is typical gay behavior. We all, we think of like the gay guy with the chihuahua, right? The gay guy with his pet. He had his cat or he had his chihuahua. It was a surrogate because these people are sterile. They can't reproduce. So it was a surrogate for whatever residual maternal or nurturing instinct was left in these people. And now this type of behavior has been adopted by heterosexuals. No, no, no. We're not going to have children. We're going to have a pet. We're going to have a cat. We're going to have a dog. And I've noticed this too, like in the forewords or the author biographies. Like when you read a book, right? You get it at Barnes and Noble. It's some newly released book. A few decades ago, it would be so and so, Michael Crichton, Robin Cook, Richard Preston, whatever. These authors, they live in blank. They live in Vermont or they live in Maine with his wife and his wife Sharon and his two children. Right, that's what it would say on the book jacket. Now it says so and so lives in New Hampshire with his three cats or with his two dogs. It's like you're Your cat has a lifespan of 10 years. Your dog has a lifespan of 7 years. It doesn't make sense to name your dog Smuckers. He lives in New Hampshire with his dog Smuckers. And it's the same thing on like these company profiles where they have these biographies of the employees. And instead of saying she lives wherever with her husband and 3 children, it's she enjoys going to the beach with her 2 dogs, Smuckers and Mr. Pete. And it's like, why do you find it necessary to include the names of the fucking dogs on the profile? Like, I don't need to know that your dog's name is Mr. Petey. Okay, why it's not your child, dum dum. It's an animal. Okay. Um yeah, they're a doggy mom and a doggy dad. Uh and again, it's one thing. Like, okay, maybe if it was like a lonely pensioner, a lonely retiree, a widower, and he gets a dog because he has no companionship. We're talking people in the prime of their lives. Okay, we're talking people who should be pumping out children, people who should be reproducing. We're not talking an elderly, lonely man. Where you have like the sentimental movie. His grandchildren, his children don't visit him, and he gets a dog. Okay, we're talking people in their prime and no children, but they have a dog, and they baby the dog. And like I said, these animals used to find more fulfillment when they had a utilitarian role. Okay, people used to keep cats, to keep the rodent population down, to keep the mice and rats out of the grain. They served a role, and it appealed to the natural hunter instinct of the cat. Dogs were kept around as sentries or as shepherds. They, nipped at the heels of the sheep to keep the flock together. Now, these animals have no role. And they're fucked up. They have, pet psychologists. Like, who's that? The dog whisperer. What's his name? The Mexican. Um, Caesar, whatever. I don't know. But, these animals are fucked up. They like shake when there's a thunderstorm. They hide under the bed. They're all fucked up mentally because they don't serve a purpose anymore. Their purpose is gone. They can't fulfill their instinct, which is to hunt mice or to, keep the flock of sheep together. Now they just, they're basically babies. They're surrogates for these people, these childless people, and everything's dysfunctional. The people, the owners are dysfunctional, and the pets themselves are dysfunctional as a result. Um, yeah, Virgin Messiah says it's especially depressing to see gorgeous young women, no kid, just a stupid dog. Yeah, and it's they elevate. That's what they do. They elevate their pet to childlike status. That's what they do. Um, it's not just a pet. It's they see it truly as like a child. That's what they do. And it's like I don't know. These people think they're never going to get old. Maybe they can have their gay bestie visit them in the nursing home or on their deathbed. Although their gay bestie is probably going to die of AIDS long before them. Um, but yeah, that. I just want to reiterate. This is, I think there's this tendency for men, in particular white men. They have like an internal locus of control. They try to blame themselves. It's their fault. Other people they like to blame others, but for whatever reason, men are always it's my fault I can't get a woman. No, it's not. Like I said, there's such a multitude of factors at play. Women have rape hysteria, anti-male sentiment. Men are entitled. Men are keeping women down. The glass ceiling. All of these buzzwords that have basically made women see men as the enemy. And that's what I mean, you have all the time the first woman to do this, the first woman to do that. Instead of, well, no, the first human to do it was a man. The first person in space was Yuri Gagarin. He was a man. Get over it. Instead, they're like, well, the first woman to do it. Yeah, well, the first woman to do it came like 12 years after the first man to do that. So what really is the accomplishment here? Um, it's this pitting the genders against each other. You have like a tug of war competition in gym class, and it's, oh, let's do the boys against the girls. Let's do that. Let's drive that wedge between the sexes. That we've got to foster that divisiveness. We've got to keep promoting that divisiveness. It's men against women. So there are a lot of things at play here. It's that high rate of bisexuality, lesbianism, promotion of alternative lifestyles, massive immigration that's disproportionately young males. Um, it's a perfect storm scenario. Okay. And like I said, this problem did not exist 20, 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. It did not exist. This is a recent phenomenon. So keep that in mind. Okay. Ugly, dorky guys were still able to date and marry, 30, 40 years ago. And something's changed. I don't think it's the men that have changed. It's women's attitudes, demeanors, society, the zeitgeist, etc. So anyway, I'm going to punch out now. I've been going for a while, but thanks for joining in. I did upload a video earlier today on my main channel, so check that out. Um, but otherwise, yeah, I'm out.